Welcome and thank you for joining us on yet another time out on the Constitution, where we talk about issues and, of course, that which has to do with the socio-economic growth and development of the Nigerian state. Today, we'll be taking a look at the issue of resource control. But then there is this common saying that the practice of true federalism, as it were, a natural law in which the federating units, as expressed in the different states making up the corporate entity called the Nigerian state, has the right to express their views primarily on the control of their natural resources within their borders, and of course make great contributions towards the maintenance of common services of the government at the center. These are just some of the things we'll be looking at as to how this can be transformed or translated positively to make the difference in the Nigerian state of today. Welcome and thanks for joining us. I am Obafemi Craig and I will be discussing with my guest in a minute. We'll be back just after this break.
Are you worried and concerned about your educational development and interested in building a sound academic education and professional career in accountancy? ASAS Institute of Accountancy and Management here offers you an opportunity for a new beginning. At ASAS Institute of Accountancy and Management, accounting professional students and secondary school leavers can take advantage of our numerous programs to qualify as professional accountants and specialists in different fields of learning. With our conducive learning environment, competent and experienced professional lecturers to see students through their examinations successfully. Classes for secondary school leavers starts in January 2019, while registration is ongoing for foundation and accountancy programs and other professional examination courses. For inquiries and registration, you can visit our corporate office at Niger House, UAC Building, 11th floor, 325 Odunlami Street, off Marina, Lagos, or email at icanedu@asas.org. or our website at www.asasim.org or call 0703 086 8455 0817 079 0833.
We thank you so much for being part of the Constitution, which has been arranged by International Center for Tax Research and Development. The Constitution is an important instrument in the lives of any government and its people. The Constitution must be firm on issues that will help development, that will help progress, that will help unity. Some of these are actually absent in the 1999 Constitution, and that is why ICTRD is conveying this television program. It is for all Nigerians. This is an opportunity that we can have to come together and speak to our government. We're going to carry out a survey on each segment that we are doing on the television program. We would like to quickly remind you that our first segment was on restructuring and a little bit of resource control. Restructuring is important in order to keep unity of this Nigeria, of our own country. We need to bring in the traditional rulers. I'm just giving you a summary. The traditional rulers are part of the society, and we cannot ignore them. They are partaking in so many aspects of our development. We also said at the last segment that we must have a constitutional court of justice. We must also have a National Constitutional Council. The National Constitutional Council is to protect our constitution. The way things are now, we have the legislative. They are supposed to be making laws, pure making laws. We have the executive, we have the judiciary. There's separation of powers. But more importantly, who is controlling them? It's as if it is the executive. Because most of the times, the legislative find faults in what executive is doing, but do not change. And if we have the National Council, the National Constitutional Council, that council can protect us, can protect the government, can protect the people from the government, and that will give us the liberty that is included in our Constitution.
That the labor of our heroes past will not be left in vain requires our collective efforts as a people. Join us on the discourse of issues and ideas on the Constitution, an interactive television program by the International Center for Tax Research and Development, in providing a new socio-economic and political order for Nigeria's growth and development. You can reach us on the following social media platforms for your comments, views, opinions, and contributions to help the government and the people build a new Nigeria for the benefit of all. Blessed with abundant natural resources, priding it on a place of reckoning in the Committee of Nations, Nigeria today is still faced with the contentious issue of resource control, as it should be beneficial to the overall interest of the people. Resource control, as it relates with the practice of true federalism and natural law, is based on the understanding of a structured system of government where the federating units express their rights to primarily control the natural resources within their borders and make agreed contributions towards the maintenance of common services of the government at the center. However, some ardent advocates on resource control are of the view that the individual, rather than the state, should be the final repository of resource control, with the payment of royalties and taxes to the state or the federal government, given by extension credence to what late Chief Obafemi Awolowo said at one time, that the benefits of resource control should accrue to the individuals and not the state, citing the principles expatiated upon by Adam Smith in The Wealth of Nations in 1776. From a broader perspective, the clamor for resource control is best explained as a clamor for adequate compensation and cry for the redistribution of the revenue allocation formula, advocating that the only thing the government should do is to impose taxes to be used for the welfare of the people. Today, the statutory distribution of revenue from the Federation account in Nigeria has been controversial as well as contentious because none of the formulas evolved at various times either by a commission of inquiry or by decree under different government and regimes since 1964 has gained general acceptability or consensus among the components units in the Nigerian Federation. In this regard, the need for a constitutional review to address the subject matter of resource control for the overall interest of the people is a concern and a wrong that must be addressed to make meaningful and impactful change on the issue of resource control in Nigeria.
Welcome back and thank you for joining us. Well, my guest today to talk about the issue at stake, I have here, let me start from the extreme right, Mr. Ikemefuna Adindu Mbagu. He's a gentleman and, of course, a public affairs analyst in the discourse of what we are looking at today. He will be taking us through the understanding of resource, the definition of resources, and, of course, resource control and the types of natural resources we can be looking at to better the life of the good people of this great country. And, of course, at the center stage, like we always say, she's always been there, and we appreciate her role and her vision in making things happen for the betterment of the good people of this great country. Mrs. Morenike Tejuade Babintina Shai. She's the president and founder of the International Center for Tax Research and Development. And together we'll be looking at the position of the Constitution as regards natural resources and issues and challenges of implementation in this regard. While here, a distinguished veteran journalist of over the years, Mr. Lekon Shote, we'll be looking at the section 16 subsection 1 and 2 with the exclusive legislative list, as well as resource allocation and land use charge. These are some of the elemental components that will form the discourse of today's topic, resource control, the way out for this great country called the Nigerian state. Let me start by first asking my guest, Mr. Ikemefuna Adindu Mbagu, to please take us through the understanding of resources, resource control, and the types of natural resources we should be looking at.
Okay, thank you very much, Bafemi. Well, resources are essentially factors of production, and the type of resources that we'll be talking about for Nigeria are mainly mineral resources. We know that Nigeria is very rich in a lot of mineral resources, ranging from even gold, which we have, tin, iron ore, We have limestone, we have copper, we have all over the country have different types. And if you move from Abia State to Plateau State to Benue, you have all manner of resources. And these are basically largely under the control of the federal government. And I think that's where we will begin to talk about resource control. When you talk about resource control, for example, you're basically talking about the ability of those who the resources are domiciled in their place to have control over those resources. And as we know, that is not the case. And I think that is the subject of debate largely in this
which shouldn't be, if you ask me, lady and gentlemen.
Absolutely.
Well, I think when you talk about resource control, with what had been discussed over the years, some people are looking for absolute control of their resources. So each state,
in line with the dictates of fiscal federalism.
Exactly, because the belief is that if we say we are different entities, even though we want to come together, I should have that economic right over the mineral resources in my area. That is those who are looking for absolute control, which means 100%. Some people are looking for a way of participating in, the extraction, the, prospecting of the oil. And those who are saying that they want the middle way out, even if the federal government is going to be, it's not even federal government, even if the government is going to be involved in the prospecting of these mineral resources, we want to have a say, And some people believe that even if they don't have a say, as far as they are concerned, they want a share. So if I have mineral resources on my land and government is going to take 100% or going to have 100%, let me have like 30% or 50% to myself.
Are we looking at it from one angle? Someone said to me here that resource control means that if I am a Bini man, for example, and I go to Kebbi State, so to speak, and finds gold in Kebbi State, the understanding here from what I'm getting is that the resource should belong to me and not the state, okay, or the federal government. I wouldn't know how that, and that all I owe the federal government is to pay taxes and royalties in that concern. I don't know if I'm correct, but the same principle should also apply if a man from Kano comes to Lagos State, or any other state and find any mineral resources of interest, that we understand that he only needs to pay royalties and taxes to the state or the federal government. Does that connect with your own point of argument?
Yes, because even Chief Obafemi Awolowo believed that resources should belong to individuals, not even to government. Because as we are talking about resource control now, even if we say let it move away from the federal government, let it go to central government, let it go to zonal government, we may still have the same problem unless proper provisions are made in the Constitution. The same problem we are having with federal government now, we may also have it in zonal. If the Constitution does not specify that mineral resources belong to the owner of the land, but that doesn't stop government from prospecting, from issue licenses. I would have seen a situation where everybody that owns land that you have mineral resources, you can go and register. There will be a register. And if government has to do anything with your land, you will be called upon, your royalty or the portion. That is the way it's done in some developed countries. And that is the way it should be done here. The way it is here now is as if our government is enslaving us, taking our properties and treating us like like as if the property belonged to them. And that is not fair. That is what the colonial did with, they drove them out of the country. And now our own people doing the same thing to us.
Anyway, you'll be talking about the Constitution. We'll look at that from your perspective.
Let me just share a little perspective on this. If we want to go back and look at the history, why was Nigeria formed? We had the Northern Protectorate, we had the Southern
Protectorate,
administered separately. as separate standalones. And when somebody, Lord Lugard, felt that he could use the resources of one part to sustain another part, that is the beginning of the problem.
Where we got
and
it from?
That is the beginning of the problem, exactly.
Where we got it from?
Yes, where some people now feel that even though the white man has gone, we still must take advantage of the resources of another part of the country. And therefore, they decide in their wisdom to use the federal might to, if you like, seize these resources so that they can have
By
access.
coercion.
Yes, access to these resources. Hey, you then have, 30%, I think now we say 13% derivation. You know, the remaining 87% is then shared according to two formulas. They say, well, according to number of states, half of that goes to number of states, then the other one goes to number of people. You and I know that the census in this country has never, nobody has
correct.
It has never been
it's always
correct.
So
yes.
it appears to me that, if you like, some people have hijacked the instrument of state in their own interest, and it's going to be a problem for us to get out of.
Yeah, we must address that. We must correct
we
it.
have to.
We must correct
We
it.
have to.
And that is why the issue of Constitution, this program is addressing such issues.
Exactly.
So I wanted to give us an insight into your discourse. You've just given us an understanding of the definition of resources, the types. So how do we understand resource control from all of this?
I think the key, as far as resource control is concerned, is that I think that the people, the owners of the land on which these resources reside, want to have a share, a fair share, or they want to have some say in the sharing of those resources so that they can also benefit. Because the whole thing boils down to the fact that a number of people feel unfairly treated when it comes to resource sharing. Because basically what you're sharing is the benefits of those resources. And if the people who own the resource, or the people who own the land on which the resources are not getting any benefit, then clearly you have a problem. And that is however we look at it, that is the crux of the matter. And that is what needs to be resolved. And the only way that it can be resolved really is to have a participatory formula for people to be able to sit down and agree how those resources will be shared. The benefits of those resources will be shared.
Well, I don't.
That is the key. Really.
Any contribution? I wouldn't know because we are just discussing generally.
Well, let me just help this narrative, this approach. You will recall that the British colonial masters, they pacified Nigeria piecemeal. This community, then the next community, then the next community, and so on. Meaning that we were, again, like standalone communities, even though we had trade and marriage or other interactions, but we were standalones. So what stops those standalone communities or nations, for example, to be called to a table, to sit down? You know, I think a certain chief of Lagos told the colonial masters in the early 1920s, he said, what is land to you? He said, land is held in trust by the living for those who have died and the children who are coming. Do you understand? So those people, the white man met them running their states. So how then suddenly they become irrelevant in determining what affects them? I don't understand that. You know, even if you say there was no, let us say, oil, for example. You remember the Niger Delta area was called the Oil River Delta area, meaning that the resource at that time that the white man came to trade with them was their palm oil. They called Nigeria the grain coast, like Ghana was called
the Gold Coast.
Gold Coast. So
when the Europeans were here,
when they came here, so what stops us? What suddenly we became unintelligent to be able to harness or discuss our resources. There's a problem there. We need
There's
to
a problem
go
there.
back to.
Yeah,
All right. You want to say something before we look at the
I just
aspect?
wanted to say that it's as if we are copying the British, because when land was ceded to the Queen, then the Royal Niger Company now came and started buying land from the natives and saying that land is vested in the Queen. And we keep saying that, oh, this is what they are doing in England. But we cannot, we are not the same, because we knew how England, the issue of property ownership in England is, if you read the history. And property ownership here in Nigeria is quite different.
We have a peculiarity that is unique to us.
So we cannot be saying that because all property or landed property is vested in the Queen, then it should be vested in the government here. No. Usually there are ways that, because a lot of this property that government is even acquiring for itself, they are not making any commercial use. And we are losing a lot of taxes, because if people have been using this land, they would have been deriving profits. They would have been producing. Government would have been getting taxes from them. So it's not intelligent of government trying to withhold, trying to say this belongs to me and you cannot do anything unless I want to do something. I think we need to resolve that the issue of resource control has to be looked into properly. If the land belongs to me, that still does not stop the government from using it.
If they must use it for the growth and development of the state.
Absolutely.
Good.
You have to negotiate with me. You can't just come and.
Well, let us look at the role of Constitution in this regard. I think it is in the place of Mrs. Ashayi to take us through this understanding the position of the Constitution as regard natural resources, the issues and challenges in implementation. Let's because of time, we must quickly look at that.
We actually have section 43 to 45 of the Constitution dealing with the right of the citizen and the right of the government. Under section 43, citizens have right to acquire property. But under section 44, there is that provision that gives the government to have control over mineral resources, gas, to the extent that they want. And it has been attached to the Land Use Act. That Land Use Act is another problem on its own. So effectively, what the Constitution says is that those control should be by the government of the Federation. And unfortunately, the Constitution did not tell us the meaning of government of Federation. And it has brought a lot of confusion. You have federal government, secretary to the federal government, secretary to the government of the Federation. So the Constitution, although the president is the head of the federal government, it is also the head of the government of the Federation. But common sense will say that when the Constitution says government of Federation, it means that federal and states must be together to control this. It's not for the federal government alone to take charge. And that is where the manipulation has come over the years. And that is why people are agitating. Because, if you look at the Natural Mineral Resources Act, it has given the federal government, it's supposed to be government of the Federation, but it's giving the minister of solid mineral resources that's to be control. To be in control. They are supposed to have state commissions or committees, which means they are supposed to come together to think about whatever they want to do with mineral resources. But that is not what is happening.
And that is what should be.
That is what should be. So I think it's misinterpretation of the Constitution itself for the federal government to believe that it is under my control. It is supposed to be under the control of government of the Federation, which means everybody must be at the round table to decide on mineral resources in anywhere. And that is why I was suggesting that we need to have zonal presidents if we have zonal presidents, there is no way, we will be able to now form that government of federation properly. Because what is happening now is that even the governors, they are afraid of the president because they belong to the same party. They don't want to do anything because I believe that governors should have been challenging. They should have been challenging the federal government long time ago on this resource control.
Is it to say that they probably may not understand technically and appropriately the dictates of what the Constitution is saying?
It is not that they do not understand. It is because they are afraid. And secondly, they are motivated by their own personal political upliftment. Because if you are governor of a state and you can clearly understand that government of the federation is not the same thing as federal government, you should be able to fight for the rights of your people.
So those are some of the issues and challenges we have in this implementation of these aspects, if that will be what we are looking at.
Yes.
Mr. Shote, time is of essence here, and let's quickly look at any contribution from your own view based on what she said, because we are just discussing.
Yes.
Would you want to say anything to that?
I think she's made the points fairly clearly. There seems to be some misunderstanding of federal government and government of the federation. So it's something that really needs to be cleared up or addressed to those who should, interpret it.
Mr. Shote, any view so that we can quickly, because time is of essence here?
We have the National Economic Council headed by the Vice President, and the other members are the governors, the state governors, and the governor of the central bank. This tells you that the resource, and then you have FAC.
Yes, we have the FAC.
This tells you that there is the understanding that these resources belong to all of us as a group, and not just the federal government. The federal government is just elevated above everybody. It has no, I think the only territory that the federal government has is Abuja.
Yes.
So if you are now going to look at the resources within my state, say Lagos State for example, then you need to negotiate with me. So no, you can't just come and say I'm federal government and be dictating to me regarding. Look at VAT, which is, I understand the largest VAT comes out of Lagos State.
That's right.
Then you want to spend that. I think I should be involved in how the money.
And it must affect me positively.
Oh yes.
You want to say something? I saw your reaction today.
No, I was just saying that the issue of governors, not able to fight for their people is very sad. And the fact that our representatives in the National Assembly, I don't actually know what they are doing, and we have to begin to question them, because a lot of decrees that the military brought into the civilian government, our representatives should have actually looked into those ones and throw
Bring them
away
to bear
those,
and review all of these
that are not
things.
useful to the
That's
people.
right, that's
This
right.
Land Use Act is one thing. This resource control is another thing. So I would believe that our legislators must really be working hard, and they can still do a lot of things before the 2019 election.
Still do all the amendables, reviews that could still give us a part of direction.
If the will is there.
If the will is there,
Yes.
the will must be there because it's democracy. Mr. Shote, you quickly now, because we must go, I know, let's look at the exclusive legislative list, and let's look at the issue of resource allocation and land use charge in the jiffy from your own perspective of the discourse here. So
That's
that
four-headed.
call it today.
Well, let's just put it like this. I think I try to talk about the land. Essentially, the Land Use Act is saying that the governor of the state is holding land in trust for the people. And then before you can use the land, there has to be something called certificate
Of
Right
occupancy.
of occupancy.
occupancy, for you to be able to use even your own land that your grandfather
Yes,
gave
sir.
to you. You
You
still
still
need
have to.
Exactly.
which is very tricky, because it then means that it is easy to deprive you of the use of this resource.
Because you are just a tenant.
And I think if you look at the Constitution, the early part of the Constitution tells you that things that have to do with resources before the 1999 Constitution comes into operation, this Constitution does not take those things away. I don't think you understand.
Very well, I am with
the
you.
The implication is that, for example, if the federal government says oil is a national resource, you cannot even begin to debate it, which I think something is wrong. If you say we cannot even...
I have just 5 more minutes to wrap up. Let's discuss, gentlemen.
You know,
so
summary is that since we are talking about resource allocation, the land itself, we need to discuss it. Okay? And then there are 68 items under the exclusive federal list. It is just unnecessarily too long. Many of those things ought to be things that even private individuals should be dealing with, not just even the state governments. You know, telephone, for example. Thank God we now have the MTNs and the Econets, and the Airtels doing this now. A lot of the resources ought to have been handled by the individuals. But Section 66, there are two, I was discussing with Sembagu before we came on air, two very serious languages there, harness and control.
Harness and control.
Harness, control. Even though the pretense that the harness and control is in the interest of the people, it is a lie.
It must be looked into.
It must be
We must
looked into.
address that.
I
must go now, ladies and gentlemen. Just a quick one, if any of you have something, one or two, just to say so that we can just wrap it up.
Resource control must be in the interest of every individual, the citizens, because the citizen, the position of the office of the citizen is the most important office in any country.
You have
it is from there that you can become president, or you have to be a citizen first before you can be governor, president, senator, or whatever.
You can't even hold any office.
Any office, yes.
Any
I
submission?
think there has to be a provision for participation so that people can actually participate in the decisions on how to use those resources.
Do you have your own contribution?
The land must belong to the people. An individual that owns that land must have authority over the land. Of course, without any prejudice to the need for economic use of the government. But it's important, and that is what everybody is saying now. Let me own my land. Let me own my resources. And whatever you are doing with my resources, I must participate and I must have a share. And I think it is fair, because you'll find a lot of people now, they sell properties that are not under the control of government, and you now take away the control of somebody else. Why can't it be general then? If it's going to be controlled, then let the control be general.
Exactly.
All right, if it's going to be controlled.
Nobody will be deprived of the resources, his or her personal resources.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, too, for your various contributions and inputs to looking at how well we can further move this country forward in the management and coordination effectively, efficiently of our resource control for the good and benefit of all as it is. We thank you.
Thank you very
much.
Thank you very much.
Take another quick break. We'll be back after this time out. Please don't go away. Do please stay with us.
Are you worried and concerned about your educational development and interested in building a sound academic education and professional career in accountancy? ACES, Institute of Accountancy and Management, here offers you an opportunity for a new beginning. At ACES, Institute of Accountancy and Management, accounting professional students and secondary school leavers can take advantage of our numerous programs to qualify as professional accountants and specialists in different fields of learning. With our conducive learning environment, competent and experienced professional lecturers to see students through their examinations successfully. Classes for secondary school leavers starts in January 2019, while registration is ongoing for foundation and accountancy programs and other professional examination courses. For enquiries and registration, you can visit our corporate office at Niger House, UAC Building, 11th floor, 325 Odunlami Street, off Marina, Lagos, or email at icanedu@aces.org. or our website at www.acersiam.org, or call 0703 086 8455 0817 079 0833. That the labor of our heroes past but not be left in vain requires our collective efforts as a people. Join us on the discourse of issues and ideas on the Constitution, an interactive television program by the International Center for Tax Research and Development, in providing a new socio-economic and political order for Nigeria's growth and development. You can reach us on the following social media platforms for your comments, views, opinions, and contributions to help the government and the people build a new Nigeria for the benefit of all.
Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. If you are just tuning in, it's still the program, The Constitution, coming to you on the platform of Lagos Weekend Television, courtesy of the International Center for Tax Research and Development. On this side of the other divide, we'll be taking a look at the relevance of the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission in achieving sustainable economic development. And like we always say in democracy, we're talking about a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And in this regard, the youths, we keep saying, are the future leaders of tomorrow. And the youths as well must have a voice that is a voice in also propagating, advocating their own views on issues as it affects the socio-economic and political growth of the Nigerian state. So for today, we'll be talking to some of our youths. We'll be taking a look at this issue of the relevance of the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission in achieving sustainable economic development. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, I will introduce my guest as it is. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back in a minute.
A new interactive television program by the International Center for Tax Research and Development is to help educate Nigerians and create an awareness on socio-economic and political issues for a new order in promoting good governance, growth and development for Nigeria. This is our focus, our mission and collective aspiration on the Constitution. A new television series and an initiative of the International Center for Tax Research and Development on Lagos Weekend Television every Sunday from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. on DSTV Channel 256, GoTV Channel 90, Star Times Channel 118 and Concert on Channel 950. Do join us.
Welcome again and thanks for staying with us. My guest to discuss the issue of Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Commission today. I have here an associate chartered accountant in the person of the chairman of the youth wing of the International Center for Tax Research and Development in the person of Mr. Madwe Buchi Obinna Emmanuel. It's a great honor to have you join me on to discuss this on this platform.
Thank you for having me.
Seated close to me is Opeoluwa Sonny. He is a student of the University of Ilorin, and precisely he's a member of the Tax Club in Ilorin. It's a great honor to have you join us on this discourse for today.
Thank you.
Very gentleman, I kept saying. It's good to have you again. And at the extreme is Ipinoluwa Ademilua. He's from the University of Lagos and he's equally a student and of course a member of the University of Lagos Student Union Tax Club. It's equally a pleasure to have you, gentlemen, on this discourse. Now let's quickly look at the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission. We know from every available information that it was established by an act with a function to, among other things, monitor the accruals to and disbursement of revenue from the federal account, as well as a review from time to time the revenue allocation formula to ensure conformity with changing realities. So what would be your remark when we look at the need to use the same commission to achieve sustainable economic development?
Okay, that's a good question there. If you look at the economy from 2016, we will see in 2016 we experienced a recession, which was a negative economic growth. And in 2017, we had a bit of a recovery and back out of the recession. And 2018 we're in recovery. So we've seen that during this period, revenue have not been well harnessed in terms of revenue accrual. The focus has been on the oil sector, getting revenue more from oil. So I would expect the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation, Fiscal Commission to ensure, when it comes to its mobilization function, to achieve balanced revenue allocation. Revenue.
When you talk about balanced revenue, what are we looking at from that perspective of your point of reasoning?
Balanced revenue means the proportion of revenue should not be focused mainly on oil revenue. It should be the non-oil sector should be looking into
agriculture, and
mineral,
other maritime sector, insurance,
exactly,
the stock market, and all of those other institutions that could still generate revenue for the state government, for the federal government.
Exactly. If you look at the power of the
power sector,
not even the power sector, the power of the revenue, the commission, they are to advise on the efficient utilization of the resources in the nation. So to what extent are they giving this advice to the government to ensure that we harness our revenue base effectively? And on the allocation side, in my own opinion, has not been actually balanced, because we look at about 50%, more than 50% of the revenue amassed is being allocated to the federal government. We have 26% to the state and 60% to the local government. So it's not actually balanced. So there's a need to look at that as well to ensure both balanced revenue mobilization and balanced revenue allocation.
All right, Oluwasani, what will be your own contribution to this discourse?
Yes, thank you very much. As for the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission, their functions are very, very clearly stated in both the Constitution and the Act that enables their establishment. These functions, apart from those mentioned already, include also monitoring accruals to the Federation account and disbursement from that same account. The purpose behind this particular provision is to ensure that there is a level of accountability.
There is a level of accountability. Yes. I think I like that word.
It's in the use of public funds, because these funds are generated from several sources, including those sources taken either directly or indirectly from the citizens themselves. So they deserve to know taxation.
That's right.
They deserve to know how these resources are being used and what they are being used for. So that is a very, very crucial part of its functions. And when performed as it should be performed, it will lead to a situation where everybody knows what the funds are being used for, and then we can better allocate them for efficient distribution, which can also help sustainable development.
Ipinoluwa, in your own view, what will be your contribution?
Well, if we examine the provisions of the Constitution, paragraph 32, part 1 of the third schedule, we see that it stipulates the powers of the Commission. Now, the Act which establishes the Commission goes ahead to grant the Commission independence and further functions, which my colleagues here have been able to highlight. Now, the problem is that the Commission is not properly carrying out the mandate that has been given to it. So, in terms of monitoring accrual and disbursement of funds, we see that the Commission has complained bitterly as to the fact that they do not have enough funds to carry out these operations. When it comes to the issue of suggesting or recommending a revenue formula, they have complained that they have not received audience for the federal government. When it comes to the issue of determining remuneration, they have been at loggerheads with the National Assembly. So what we find is that the law already stipulates what their role should be, but the factors that exist in the government today are preventing the Commission from properly functioning. So those factors are what needs to be highlighted and tackled for this Commission to help and aid in sustainable economic development.
He made a point here that part of what they should do is to equally advise. Is it to say that they are not advising the federal government, or is it to say that it is the federal government that is not giving them a listening ear, so that they will be seen to be doing what is supposed to be their statutory functions and duties to better the Lord and the essence of why they were created in the first instance?
Yes, on one hand, they've made some attempt to advise the government, and we have the issue of, let's look at the proposed formula bill that they passed that was passed to the government, and from what we read, we noticed that the comment has been that they've not been given listening ears, so even meet with the presidency. So from that point, I can say they've tried to advise the federal government, but they've not been given listening ears. But on the other hand, we should also look at I expect them to also do more in terms of generic advice, not until you pass a bill. Not only the federal government advise the other agency as to how to...
In that chain of that is so affected in having a responsibility to do with what the commission is serving.
Exactly, in that aspect. So on one hand, they've tried to advise and they were not given the listening ear. On the other hand, they could go beyond the federal government and to look at other units, other agencies, other departments they could advise and advise the states, the local governments on how to maximize revenue efficiency.
Okay, what would be your own contribution to that, based on what? Because you actually brought up this issue for me to connect with that of what he said earlier, based on what you said in your remark.
All right. I think the problem of the commission right now is twofold. He has highlighted one, which is on the part of the government not giving them a listening ear. But I think it goes back to the fact that there are certain factors that are preventing them. For instance, there are currently 7 commissioners of the 38 stipulated by the Constitution. So for the tenure of 30 commissioners ended in 2015. For the past 3 years, they've not been able to have the 13 commissioners required to make a quorum for decision making. So even if they wanted to function, the failure on the part of the executive to appoint these commissioners in line with the constitutional provisions is preventing them from doing so. What he mentioned regarding the revenue formula came up in 2014 when these commissioners were in office, and this shows that even as far back as 4 years ago, when they proposed a revenue formula, which they had to do from time to time to match changing realities, they did not get an audience with the federal government. So when they have tried to function, they've been prevented from functioning properly under the federal government, and presently they do not even have the capacity to even function.
So what can be done now? Because whether we like it or not, the essence of creating the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission is to ensure, that is which is their primary responsibility, but above all, achieving sustainable economic development is a goal that must not be compromised, but that must be achieved. Definitely. So what do we say to that, and what do we do? Sonny, you want to say something?
Yes, definitely. There's a lot that can be done. Okay, he has spoken about the issue of the lack of independence and the fact that they are not being, the RNAFC is not being enabled in its performance of its functions. So it's almost like a lone voice crying out in the wind, so to speak. So it needs to be given the institutional support that it needs in order to perform its functions. Now, the current presidency has not inaugurated the commissioners or appointed the commissioners that it should. That can be looked into.
To make it effective and functional the way it should be.
And also funding. Its funding is always key for anybody to perform its
an institution or any agency of government.
It must be given enough funding to perform. And even beyond that, there needs to be a recognition that this body is in existence for a reason. And the reason is to promote sustainable development in Nigeria. So all hands must be on board to give effect to these functions as they are bestowed on the commission.
Well, we must go quickly, your own submission, so that we just say thank you for coming.
Well, I feel they must go beyond what they currently do, which is just monitor and issue statements regarding failure to remit funds, and actually look towards compliance mechanisms to make sure that the agencies which they have commented on, such as the NNPC, actually remit these funds back to the Federation account. They must also exercise the independence granted to them by its constitution, make sure that all federal agencies are subject to their constitutionally vested powers, thus allowing them to properly function and allowing, like he said, recovery and fast-tracking of economic development within the nation.
Your own submission, sir, so that we go.
My submission would be the independence, a situation whereby the States Assembly and the National Assembly will give the same law on what the Commission have to do. They should give them independence so they could act properly, and the issue of funding should be given to them. And above all, the other parastatals should understand that we are all working to achieve the same purpose. The political interference should be reduced, and so that we can bring the nation and the country among the top fastest developing nation.
Gentlemen, I want to say a big thank you for being our guest here on the program today. We look forward to having you some other time when we look at some of this discourse that will also be beneficial and uplift the vision and purpose of why the program, the Constitution, is meant to achieve. I thank you for your time with us today.
Thank you
so very much.
Thank you.
Well, that's just what it is for today on the Constitution. We want you to also air your views. Please, you can read through our social media platforms and let's have your feedbacks as to what will be your own contributions and opinion in all we have discussed so that we can come back to talk about them on our next edition. Thanking you for today and hoping together that the essence of why we are here on this program, the Constitution, will be well articulated, well achieved if we bring all of these elemental elements into view, into discourse and change for the good of everybody. Thank you for today. We hope to see you again same time next week.